It says I'm live. Hi, it is another Pittsburgh Hockey Now, National Hockey Now live chat. I am Dan Kingerski. Do me a favor, like and subscribe so you get notified of these little things here. I realized about 30 seconds ago, I actually didn't even comb my hair today. Such is an off day. We're going to hit the Penguins universe pretty hard. We're going to go through it all since I haven't done a live chat in quite some time. Although if you read the PHN Plus report cards, Dave Molinari getting into the analysis act as well recently. Last few home games, he's done the six-pack, which is starting to gain a little bit of traction too. So check that out. We'll talk, of course, about the Penguins winning, believe it or not, as we talk here at 1:15 on Tuesday. I'm sorry for the sniffles a little bit there. 1:15 on Tuesday. The Penguins actually have one of the 8 best winning percentages in the Eastern Conference, which actually means they would be in a wild card spot. Believe it or not. Now they have to gain a few more points. They have to avoid the stinkers that have otherwise dogged them this season. But they've got a pretty good chance. Vegas is really struggling. They go to Vegas Thursday. We all leave. Oh, wait, no, they play in Vegas Saturday, but we all leave on Wednesday because they're practicing in Vegas on Thursday and Friday. It's a rough life. Then they've got Arizona before coming back for a few home games. Lots of winnable games, and the Penguins really do have to, I think, as it turns to February before that bye week, I think they have to establish themselves in that position. I think they have to keep this 7 of 10, at worst, 6 wins in 10 games going. There's just no two ways about that. So I certainly can chat here, comment and questions here. I actually can't see how many people are on or anything like that right now, so it's kind of weird. Let me share this again. Oh, there it is. There's the share button. And just let the gang know we are live. Of course, if I could spell, my computer's being really wonky, I guess, with the live stream. Okay, so cutting to the brass tacks of the Penguins' success. So they are 8-2-3 in their last 13 games. That's 16-19 of a possible 26 points. That'll get you on a President's Trophy pace pretty quickly, won't it? Sorry. Every time I think they've adopted something, they kind of, it's like a game of perfection, just pops up and they start all over again. They were playing, I thought, wonderfully gritty hockey around the net, in the corners, and then they have a couple of bad games. Like, honest to God, it's like they almost internally, without discussing it, said to themselves, okay, we did it. We can do it. We don't need to do it anymore. And I'm trying to think, it was Vancouver and Carolina. The Carolina game was especially awful. Absolutely awful. I found almost nothing redeeming about their game except they finished a couple of chances late and Tristan Jarry kept them in the game. Otherwise, they were bunk. They weren't great against Seattle either. And this kind of begins to get to the ugly sort of hockey. It's good for them. They weren't offensive or offensive. They weren't great in any one area. They just took the puck and they played smart with it. And they kept Seattle from gaining momentum. And they just kind of kept grinding away at Seattle. So literally by the end of the first period, I think Seattle was ready to go home. That's pretty good. You didn't see the big mistakes from Erik Karlsson. You didn't see the awful mistakes from the top six getting too aggressive. You didn't see the kids, Puustinen and Zohorna, making mistakes, giving up odd man rushes. You didn't see them trying to force passes across the blue line or going diagonally through center ice into the teeth of the traffic, allowing Seattle to transition. You didn't see all of those things that you saw against Carolina that really fed Carolina. 10 odd man rushes from Carolina. I think there were 2 that Seattle got, and I think any coach, if you said, okay, the other team will get only 2 odd man rushes this game, most coaches will, in fact, take it. Hey, Mutation says you should do one of these at a regular time each week. Seems really random. Well, they are. I don't know if you realize this, Mutation, but the Hockey Now network is at 15. I think by the end of the week, we're going to be at 17 sites. We've got the Steelers, the Patriots, the Pirates, a venture capitalist deal. You know, there's a loose puck in the crease. Whether or not they put it in the net or we put it in the net, I'm not sure we're going to get there, but, you know, it's right there. So, yeah, and also I'm traveling to most of the games this season, just for various reasons. I'm a on the honest to God, on the days off, Mutation, that I could do these, I am so bloody dog tired that I have no desire. I mean, I've already written 2 stories today, and I've already, you know, I have to finish up payroll and I have to do all other things. I'm not just a beat writer. I'm also the president. But that's, I think, just putting a bow on the beginning of our show. The Penguins have to learn to love to play ugly. They have to learn to love the result more than the individual results. They have to learn to love the scoreboard more than they do playing hockey, if you know what I mean by that. They all come to the table. I think Mike Sullivan said this in his own way, talking about a lot of the guys in their DNA want to outscore the opponents. That's pretty accurate. Using his vernacular, the Penguins have to forget about trying to outscore their opponents and outplay their opponents. Scoreboard over style. And if they can, this is crazy. This is crazy talk that I'm about to drop on you here. But think about this. If the Penguins can play that ugly game that has now beaten Carolina once, beaten the Islanders, went to overtime against Carolina, took the Rangers to 1-0. I mean, that was, they beat the Rangers that night. So if they can play that game, and they beat Boston, oh, by the way, in Boston. So if they can play that game, who in the Eastern Conference can't the Penguins beat? I think the Rangers, quite frankly, are a paper tiger. Carolina will always give them fits. And I could analyze that for days because part of it is psychological. I don't think in a 7-game series, the Flyers or the Capitals would hold up against them. So I don't think in a 7-game series, Toronto would be able to withstand that grind game. The big challenge there would be the Penguins not succumbing to a team like Toronto's high-flying act. Florida is really good. Florida knows how to grind. They might be, I think, the presumptive favorites going into the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. But the Penguins will be right there if they get in to the dance. If they can, knock off those demons and listen to the angels, they'd be just fine. Damon, how about DOC? I'm glad he's playing with confidence and finishing. Have you heard anything about Jesse Puljujarvi? I know he scored at the AHL level, but is he showing NHL potential? Damon, it's a little too soon on Pugliarvi. I mean, look, the guy had double hip resurfacing surgery. I think both he and the Penguins were surprised at how far away he was when he signed his NHL tryout deal. And it wasn't a wait, let me rephrase that, because a PTO was actually incorrect. Like ESPN and other places use the term PTO when he signed with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and that wasn't accurate. It was actually a free agent tryout deal. So after 10 days, Pugliarvi had to pay his own way. And I think they realized that his skating wasn't there. It's going to take a few weeks, Damon, before Pugliarvi is, I think, in game shape. And you know what happens to guys who have these serious surgeries and don't get to prep for the season, and they're just starting their rehab? They get to healthy, but then they get really tired because they have spent so much energy in getting back to healthy. And these games really wear on you. So you kind of have this bit of a roller coaster effect. However, I heard he's improving, and I guess that's all I'll say about that. I think if the Penguins make another call up, Sam Poulin is the guy. I hear that he's playing defense like a monster, and he's chipping in some goals. He's really kind of honing in on the other side of the game. And look, he might not ever score 20 goals in the NHL, but if he can provide a physical presence and play a stout defense, there's certainly a place on the Penguins' fourth line for him. Let's see here. Matt says the problem on the power play is that they don't play the ugly game there. All the 5x5 success is by chasing, forechecking down low, feed the points, shoot, rebound, repeat. Need to do that on the power play. Matt, you're not wrong. They just have it in their heads how the power play is supposed to look and feel. I got nothing else. I mean, they have to get over that mental block. I don't think those 5 guys or 4 guys, because they've flopped Raquel and Rust a little bit on the power play. I don't think they're going to do it. I think they're going to need a jolt to get them out of that mindset. Mob Talk Radio. In reality, if the Penguins were to trade Gensel, they almost have to do it before this offseason. Well, yeah, they would get like a 3rd or 4th round pick if they just traded his rights. What is the return going to look like? Top 6 plus first round? He is a rental. There is some question on how much of a Sidney Crosby creation he is. I wasn't going to get to Jake Gensel for a little while here, but since Mob Talk dragged us into it, one, I don't see them trading Jake Gensel. Think of it this way. They are going to trade Jake Gensel to themselves. He will be their big acquisition. Follow me on this thread here. Because what are you going to get for Gensel? Let's just say, you're not getting a top 6 forward. No team. What team is going to give you a top 6 forward to acquire a top 6 forward and a first round pick to boot? No, that's not going to happen. But let's just say first rounder and a pretty good prospect, or a first rounder and a defenseman, or what team is going to acquire Jake Gensel? A very good team, right? Where do very good teams select in the NHL draft? That's right, at the back of the first round. So you're getting a late first rounder. Maybe they could huckleberry somebody, in the mid pack for going for it, and they miss the playoffs, and the Penguins get lucky. But most teams are going to lottery protect their first round pick if they're in that position. So the Penguins still won't get a good first round pick. We're talking that 21 to 32 range, plus a prospect. So let me ask you a question. If the playoffs are still a legitimate possibility, do you want Jake Gensel, or do you want a late first pick and a maybe prospect for a year or two down the road? Don't say the latter. It's the former. And that's what the Penguins most likely are going to do. Now, if they lose the next 5, they're kind of stumbling and out of it, and they're 8 points back. Dubas might just say, to hell with this, pull the plug. And then you do trade Jake Gensel because you have to get something for him. You don't, otherwise, what you get for him is a playoff appearance and maybe a playoff run, which is what they would do. You know, they're going to acquire somebody, so they're just going to acquire Jake Gensel from themselves. Think of it that way. Let's see here. Oh, got a bunch of stuff rolling in here. Rob asked, any further news on what the Penguins thinking on Jake? Listen, Saturday night, Elliot Friedman rolled it down. We've reported it. Everybody has been on it. This really does come down to what the Penguins are going to do in the future. It doesn't come down to what's going to happen right now. If they don't think they're going to sign him, he becomes their rental. If they do decide they think they can somehow retool and Jake gives them a good salary number, yeah, maybe he could resign. It would be more of a team contract than it would be a player-friendly contract. But no, nothing has changed since Saturday. This is not a hot situation. This isn't even a roiling situation. This is a cold situation that will not have a decision for weeks, if not, months. If Puljujärvi works out, can he kind of become a deadline acquisition for the third line? I don't know. I don't know if he will have enough offense at the NHL level. He was supposed to, but that just hasn't really come into play. Obviously, he would fit on the bottom 6. I don't think you want to put him on Malkin's wing. Puljujärvi is still such an unknown quantity that maybe it all clicks. Maybe the hips have been bad for a while. Maybe now that he's skating, he finds his hands, and we have a Hallmark Lifetime movie where he rides into Pittsburgh as the savior. Not really going to happen, but yeah, I suppose third line in place of Puustinen is a likely spot. Don't forget Riley Smith comes back too. So they're going to be a little bit crowded there in the middle 6. Maybe Jeff Carter takes that third line role on the wing with Lars Eller. And maybe Puljujärvi takes the right wing with Cookie. Do I think the players have a say in keeping Jake or influencing him to re-sign in the offseason? No. I mean, look, you have 100% they have talked about it and will talk about it amongst themselves. They also, don't forget, Rob, this is their job. This is their life. And they get a very finite window with which to make a living. No player is going to grumble and gruff at Jake Gensel if he decides to take more money. In fact, they will probably encourage him to do so. Malkin, Crosby, Letang are a little bit of a different story. And that was because they all knew Malkin wanted to stay. Crosby probably will have a conversation with Kyle Dubas like, hey, I really like this guy. I want him to stay. Dubas strikes me as a pretty straight shooter, however. And Dubas might say, listen, Sid, at certain ranges, we'd love him to stay. Beyond those ranges, he can't. And, what? That's just the business side of hockey. IR3K. I think Malkin on the power play seems to be the biggest problem. His shot isn't a threat anymore, and he holds on to the puck too long. I don't think you're wrong. I think maybe you're going a little too far in saying his shot isn't a threat. I mean, he can still rip it. But he hasn't been as effective with the ripper from the circle or the wall. And he does. He is still in that mindset of get the puck, hold it, look, survey, look around, let's see what develops. And it's got to be quick. I mean, that's just the way the game is going. The penalty killers are too aggressive now. They can all skate too well now. You got to be quick. You got to be moving. You got to be urgent. You got to get it. You got to blast it when you have that lane. You can't think about it. You have to know what you're going to do if you have X or if you have Y, and just keep making those decisions. Let's see. I do have more stuff to get to, by the way. I wrote it on junk mail. You can tell we got rid of the studio downtown just because I went there once every 3 weeks. Maybe we should talk about the power play because I did write a good bit about that. In fact, on the story I just wrote, let me pop up that story. I'm going to link it to you eventually. There it is. I wrote a little bit about three Penguins thoughts. And number 2 is dealing with the power play. It is broken. There's no two ways about it. Big changes have to occur to it. Most likely personnel changes have to occur to it, right? I mean, let's not kid ourselves. And Malkin and Carlson at the top, to me, seem to be the problem. Going with IR3K's point, I would, in fact, move Malkin off the top first because, and here's my rationale behind that. Last year, the power play kind of stunk as well. That was with Letang and Malkin. So putting Letang back there with Malkin, Crosby, Gensel, Raquel, or Rust is doing what you struggled with last year. So there's really no point to doing that, is there? By moving Malkin. But now who do we move Malkin for? The coaches really don't have any options. Ricard Raquel isn't good enough defensively to play the point on power play 1. I don't think Marcus Pettersson has enough offensive flair. For a minute, I was thinking Pettersson just as a defensive anchor. But I think maybe I was in the right church, wrong pew. I think the other point could be a defenseman. Let Carlson go wild. Just take whatever shackles off and say, go. Skate it hard, go. P.O. Joseph might be the guy who can counterbalance a wild man Carlson on the power play. P.O. also has a lot of untapped offensive instincts and ability. Maybe this would be an opportunity to unlock some of those, to get him to a better game. That's kind of my only solution right now, is to get Malkin off and not replace Malkin with more of the same, but replace him with something entirely different, almost something that is unneeded. Joseph wouldn't improve the talent level of the power play, but maybe by unleashing Carlson, the other 4 would have a better time. That's my only thinking on that. Let's see here. Rob, I really like what I've seen from Harkins. Fast, good on the forecheck, and actually chipping in on the offense a bit as he kind of secured his spot on the 4th line. Well, you're right about everything. I've really liked what I saw about Harkins, too. I had to bite my tongue, and I saw some criticism of him maybe about 2 weeks ago, maybe a little bit less, saying he couldn't skate or he was terrible. And I was just like, what? No, all of that is wrong. You've seen what Harkins can do. And he's kind of Brandon Tanev without the insanity, right? That's good. But in terms of securing a spot, I don't think any of the bottom 6, except Lars Eller, has secured a spot. If they go 10 games and don't look good, actually, some of these guys, if let's just say Harkins plays 3 or 4 poor games, he's coming out of the lineup because he's not solidified. And you need to remind those guys who haven't yet cast their die that they have to maintain a level up here that they can't, go back and forth and up and down. Put Crosby on the point. No, that's very much not his game, and very much wasting a lot of his talents down low, getting the puck, being a dog down near the net, the deflections, the playmaking down there as well. And by the way, when I say point, when I refer to Malkin, it is kind of the mid-wall point position. Just just for clarity and accuracy's sake. But most of the time, that left wall does kind of cycle to the point, and Carlson will go, and they interchange there. There's a lot of top zone play from their left wall. But Crosby doesn't have a big booming slap shot. He's got a good one-timer from the circle, but not a great one. That's never been his forte. I think Eller has more upside. He kind of does. I mean, Eller has a wicked wrista. He's got a release on it that puts some spin on the puck. But that's just some guys, that's just not their game. For whatever reason, they can have the tools, but they don't maybe have all the tools. That mental connector, whatever it might be. Eller might score 15 goals this year, which would be a really good season for him. And I think with the defense that he provides, the penalty killing that he provides, I think the Penguins would be quite happy with a 15-goal campaign. Even a 13 goal campaign from Eller, I think, would be just fine. Let's get back. Can you read my writing? Let's get back to my notes here, kind of discussing the NHL trade deadline and where the Penguins sit. Because I know you guys were asking about Jake. So let's flip that a little bit, because they're not going to trade Jake Gensel. Probably not. What do they need and how do they get it? I think we have to start with what do they need first. And so much depends on Riley Smith, his timeline. As of yesterday, Mike Sullivan didn't have a timeline, at least that they were going to share with us publicly, on Riley Smith. And what was it? 2 goals in 30 games? 2 goals in 29 games? Eller was ice cold. He did the same thing in the second half of the season last year in Vegas, too, which is concerning. He has 8 goals this year, but that was that torrid 2-week run when you thought, wow, Dubas is brilliant. He found Riley Smith to mesh with Malkin perfectly. And then, the wheels came off both of them, quite frankly. Let me take a sip of coffee here. It's getting a little cold. I'm going to have to pause the show and go microwave it. I've been talking for 30 minutes already. Good Lord, you all get me jabbering. But anyway, I think if you take a look at the Penguins' roster construction, the 2 things they could use are a third pairing defenseman, maybe even 2, to be honest. They could upgrade either left or right there. And a middle 6 winger capable of reliable, consistent offense. Chip in some goals. Now, the middle 6 winger probably would be the cheapest of all of that. You might be able to snag somebody for a 3rd rounder, a 2nd rounder. They have those. What they don't have is salary cap space. So at that point, we need to look at, who can they move out? You know the names that they can move out. An expensive defenseman who's still struggling to get it, although Ryan Graves has been exponentially better over the last week, maybe 2 weeks. Who else could they trade? Riley Smith. I don't even know if he'll be healthy by the March 8th deadline. Other than that, the Penguins don't have a lot to chum the water with. Sam Poulin, I don't foresee them trading Joel Blomqvist or Joel. if you're really going to be specific and accurate about it. You're not going to trade Yoel Blomqvist because the odds are you're going to lose one of Tristan Jarry or Alex Nedeljkovic this summer. And who's going to step into that backup role? Well, you have to wonder if Blomqvist would be the guy. If not next season, then certainly within 2 seasons. And you don't want to trade him now. You want to wait a couple of years, and maybe he's got starter potential, and maybe he shoves aside a $5 million goalie like Tristan Jarry did, like Matt Murray did. Such is the nature of this business, right? Dave, good afternoon, Dan. How are you, Dave? Matt B, has Ned become an asset that he can be traded at the deadline? It's a risk given Jarry's history, but assets are slim in the Penguins organization. Matt, boy, you and I were on the same wavelength there. I do not think the Penguins would trade Nedeljkovic unless they received a competent backup goalie capable of starting games and a healthy package beyond that. But what team's going to do that? Like, would Edmonton give the Penguins Stuart Skinner and a number 1? I don't see it. And would the Penguins want Stuart Skinner? Would the Devils give up? I mean, would the Penguins want Vitek Vanacek and a number 1? I don't see the Devils doing it. So, trying to think of the other teams that need goalies very desperately. Columbus has Merzlikins out there. Montreal has Jake Allen out there. Though I'm starting to wonder if Montembeault, I apologize, Sam. People butcher my last name, and I can't say Sam Montembeault either. But he might be out there. Caden Primo in Montreal might also be out there. So I don't think, unless a GM decided Alex Nedeljkovic was the guy that they had to have, I don't see a substantial enough market for him that would pry him, that would make it worth the Penguins' while to trade him. Now, again, all bets are off for the next 3 or 4 weeks. The Penguins fall out of wild card contention. All bets are off at that point. And yes, Ned would be a huge asset to trade. I also wonder if they would try to keep Ned longer term and what that might mean for their trade assets. I'll leave that at that. Let's talk about some of the guys on the trade block. I'm going to be writing about this in a couple days. So the bloggers who like to roll in and steal a few ideas, my gift to you. There is one guy that I have circled on the trade block. I think the Penguins really could benefit by acquiring, and it's for completely wild and silly reasons. Sean Monahan in Montreal. He's a center. He's not a great skater, but he's a good playmaker. He's a good penalty killer. He plays the top of Montreal's power play. And let's just say they get a guy capable of being a second-line center. What does that mean for Evgeny Malkin? It means Malkin can play the left wing. Now, I don't think Malkin wants that. I don't think Mike Sullivan wants that. But I have to wonder if that should be what's done anyway. I asked that question every training camp with Mike Sullivan. And I don't remember if I did last September or not. I think I might have given him a year off. But every year I ask about, if he feels like Malkin could benefit from moving to the left wing, less wear and tear on the body, less wear and tear on the knees, an easier game, but still getting the puck in his hands. I love the idea at this point. I don't think Malkin is physically capable of playing that top elite level game every night from in the middle. He might shove those words right back down my gullet. He did after the Christmas break. After the holiday break, he came back. He was at level 10. But now here in mid-January, we're back down to like 70% Malkin. And he just doesn't have that snap, that gallop most times. He's just a half step slower. I think the wing could be good for him. I think Mike Sullivan likes putting some speed on his wings instead. Brian Rust and Drew O'Connor to go that way, kind of pulling Malkin like a dog sled up the ice, forcing him to play that north-south game and dragging him into the fight. Ned for Martin Jones and Nick Robertson. Though not sure anybody in Toronto would answer Dubas's call. That's a pretty good point. Martin Jones, really? I know he's had a better season than expected, but Martin Jones, wasn't he over the last 3 years statistically the worst goaltender in the NHL? Robertson has been a very intriguing prospect. I expected Dubas to have acquired him already, quite frankly. But I think Robertson went through waivers and Dubas let him go. Double check me on that. But I did expect Robertson to be a Penguin before the end of the year. Have you ever met Jágr? I can't wait for 68 to be back in Pittsburgh. I have briefly met Jaromir Jágr. My very first year covering the Penguins in the locker room was his first year in Washington. So if it makes you feel any better, I met Chris Beach, Ross Lupaschuk, and Michael Civic, and Toby Peterson, and Brian Holzinger, and Mario Lemieux, and Mark Bergevin, and Mark Recchi, and Kevin Stevens, and John LeClaire, and but no, I haven't met Jágr. I will undoubtedly be there that night. Okay, so we've talked a bit about Sean Monahan. I wanted to circle his name because I do think he could provide a little boost to the Penguins' power play, and I think they could figure it out from there. He probably costs a first-round pick or a good prospect and a second. It's hard for me to see a guy who's going to score like maybe 50 points this season getting a first-round pick. I just don't necessarily see that for him. Everybody always overestimates some of these guys like that, especially when you're coming out of Montreal or Toronto. All of their guys are worth gold, and everybody else is worth silver. I think Monahan is a wonderful bronze medal. Second-round pick, a little sweetener, maybe a third-round pick and a sweetener. I think he would be affordable on several levels for the Penguins. Anthony Duclair is a guy to keep an eye on of the San Jose Sharks because he makes, what is it, 3.5, $4 million? And his production certainly doesn't add up to that sort of monetary output, but he could be a decent middle six sort of guy. There's a couple defensemen out there, and I think Chris Tanev was tied to the Penguins momentarily. A defenseman, a blood and guts defenseman. Every team wants him. He will undoubtedly trade well above his value. The other guy would be Tyson Barrie in Nashville. Could the Penguins make that work and get a power play quarterback? How funny would that be if the Penguins were, let's just say Nashville liked one of the Penguins' expendable players and they got the deal for Tyson Barrie done. And there's Letang and Carlson watching power play one. That might be, yeah, that's a bit of fiction I suppose. But we can muse and we can wax philosophical about it. I do think something like I think for the Penguins to actually improve, they cannot nibble at the deadline. I think Dubas is going to have to figure out a way to make a legitimate and substantial hockey trade. I like where the Penguins are headed. I think as constructed, they can beat some teams in the playoffs. But you want every possible weapon at your disposal to do so. The power play clearly is not one. And that third pairing, if push came to shove, Graves, Carlson, Letang were to be injured, or I should say Pedersen, Carlson, Letang were to be injured, who steps up into their place? The Penguins would be kind of in deep doo-doo. Chad Ruhwedel's had a resurgent season. Don't get me wrong. You don't want to see him playing top 4 minutes. That would expose him, wear him down, and not be in the Penguins' best interest. So a third pairing defenseman who could flip to the second pairing, I think would do a lot. And again, Tanev would add a lot of that jam, some sandpaper that they really want and need, but he's going to go for a second and third rounder, first and a third rounder. That's just kind of, used to be a second and a fifth for a guy like that. Now, because they're increasingly rare and he can skate, do me a favor, like the little show we've done here. Also, subscribe to the channel. So as soon as I upload the post-game videos, you get notified. When I do the little Penguin post-game videos from the arena, you get notified. And I even get paid just a wee little bit. No kidding, I make like 75 cents to do these videos. But we've done 40 minutes. So here is your last call for questions. We're on like a 30-second delay. So I'm going to take a big old chug of finish off this. It's a French vanilla, not a latte, but one of those foofy coffees. Because it's the afternoon, I figured this was lunch. So, last call, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I appreciate you all. Thank you, guys. I will. I should have some time in Vegas. Maybe later in the week I'll do a little bit more too. Of course, I also I go to my happy place in Vegas, and living there for months has not soured me on it. So I think our love affair is legit. But I will talk to you from Vegas. In the meantime, have fun.